Welcome to the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. He's Penn Live Steelers beat reporter Nick Farabaugh, and I'm John Luciew. And here we sit in days after the draft. All the picks by the Steelers have been discussed, debated, and graded. But I've been obviously on social media looking at some of the Yinzer response to these picks. And right now it is Will Howard to the moon. People are latching on to that John Gruden QB camp that he did with Will Howard, and they're projecting the Ohio State national champion to be the second coming of Josh Allen with remnants of Big Ben Roethlisberger. So we're going to need Nick to give us a reality check on how Howard projects as a sixth rounder, and also sort of analyze this draft class in terms of the message it's sending, both to the veterans on the team and to the league, and where the real impacts will come from these rookies. But first, I got to ask Nick about probably the biggest story of the draft, and really a story that elevated the TV ratings into day 3 of the draft, and that was the epic slide of Shedeur Sanders down the draft board and into the 5th round. And we know a few days before the draft, Mike Tomlin was speaking glowingly about Shedeur's game, his toughness, all the things he liked in Sanders. And since the draft, there's this report that that some NFL owners, team owners, put out the word to take Shedeur Sanders off their draft boards. They did not want to deal with the whole Dion Shedeur sideshow and had him taken down. I'm trying to Nick, obviously he was nowhere near high on the Steelers board if he fell so low. So what was this? Was this a smokescreen by Tomlin? Is there any sense that the Steelers took him off the board at some point for whatever reason? And what was the true evaluation that the Steelers had on Sanders? Any more color you can give us on that crazy
Yeah, I
story?
mean, obviously it was some bit of a smokescreen, right? I mean, clearly, because as we were talking here, it sounded like the league thought they were going quarterback in some way, whether it was Shedeur or Dart, right? They thought quarterback was high on the Steelers' board. So that was definitely a calculated move because the Steelers were never considering quarterback at 21 from what it sounds like after the fact, right? The Steelers have done this a few times now this year where remember the Russell Wilson stuff earlier this year where they were talking about, oh, it's Justin or Russ, and they really never had any intention of bringing Russell Wilson back ever. It seems like very similarly, they never had an intention of taking Shedeur Sanders in the first round. Now, Shedeur was on their board and I think was their second highest rated quarterback in the class. So I do think they liked Shedeur. I think if he had gotten there to their 5th round pick, they may have taken. We'll never know the answer to that, of course, but I do think they would have considered it. I think they definitely would have considered it in the 6th, obviously, when they got Will Howard, but he had no shot of getting there. But they were never super high on him. They were never super high on Jackson Dart. They were never super high on any of these quarterbacks not named Cam Ward. So it certainly seems like the Steelers really did smokescreen everybody on this. Now, they did like Shedeur. They liked some things he did. And so I think he was going to be in consideration there for their later day 3 picks. But I also think you look at it and you say, man, the whole league clearly was kind of united on their thoughts about Shedeur, right? He was a day 3 guy they viewed him as, and they didn't view him as a starting quarterback prospect. And so that's really the answer to that one is the Steelers kind of used the leverage from their visit, used that to smokescreen teams into thinking they were big-time fans of Sanders or Dart in the first round. And by doing so, they were able to stave off some teams that probably would have come up for Derek Carman, and they land him as a result.
No, that was interesting the way it all played out. The other interesting thing that, obviously in the national media in the days after the draft, it seems like the Steelers are going to be forever linked to Shedeur because they were seen as one of maybe a handful, maybe 3 of the most likely teams to take him. He fell to them several times where they could have taken their needy team. They still don't have an anointed starter. Aaron Rodgers may or may not be that person. How do you think this plays out in a few years? He's going to the Browns. That whole QB room is a mess. We know how the Browns go through QBs like toilet paper. Does this sort of become sort of the ghost of Shedeur haunting the Steelers down the road? Is there any chance of that?
I mean, sure there is. I mean, Shedeur, I think, as we talked about, to me, is a very high floor prospect. For a franchise like the Browns, I think that's a lot more appealing, just because of the fact that they have not had that level of quarterback play really throughout their history either. They've been looking for a quarterback that's just not a complete disaster class, right? Deshaun Watson came in, and this guy just fell apart. I mean, the guy you saw at the Texans was not even close to where Deshaun Watson was, and then he gets hurt all the time. So all of this is just kind of a floor-raising move for them. And so, sure, he could come back and be a starter for them. I think it's legitimately an option. So here's the thing about Shedeur. This guy is accurate. He's smart. He's able to throw the ball to all levels of the field. So he has traits that are much better than that of a fifth-round quarterback. I think he was way underdrafted. There's no doubt about it. I think this was a guy that should have gone on day 2 at the latest. I don't care what anyone says. I don't know what he was like in interviews or the board work. I don't know those kind of rumors and everything like that. But what I do know is that the talent on tape is at worst to me a early third, but I have it a second on him. I mean, I would have taken him on day 2. So to me, this guy is a really solid player. And so I don't know haunting them. I don't think it's going to come back to haunt them like passing on Lamar did, for example. That one, it has really haunted them, right? But I don't think it's going to come back to do it like that. But I do think Shedeur has the chance to stick with the Browns and even be their starter.
Just you bringing up Lamar sent a shiver down my spine. The ghost of drafts past. Now back to the quarterback we did take with Will Howard in the 6th round. And, that Gruden QB camp that he did with them is all over social media. It's being shared by tons of Steelers fans. They're liking a lot of what he did in that. And Gruden was gushing in talking about Howard. So some of the interesting comments I found on social media, Nick, they're talking about the guy's vibes, his vibes. They're saying he's a stud between the ears, whatever that means. And this is not just Yinzers. Some of these guys are sports guys. Josh Carney, he's the Ohio, Pennsylvania sports editor for USA Today. He posted, don't know how to describe it, but the vibes are just so high with Will Howard. Just has a certain feel to him. Felt it all year at Ohio State and definitely in the playoffs. Really liked the guy. Here's another one. I can't sit here and tell you that Will Howard is going to be our next franchise QB. Time will tell. But what I can tell you is that he possesses every single thing you could possibly want in a QB. Tough as nails, Big Ben, Joshua Allen type of a frame, leadership, and a guy. And that is from Jared Kane. Now, he is a self-described Yinzer, but he has like 20K followers on X. And then there's this from Kevin Adams with Barstool. I acknowledge Will Howard is a 6th rounder. Odds of him being a stud, having been drafted there, are very low. But watch the Gruden QB camp and tell me he doesn't at least tickle your imagination as a Steelers fan. Between the ears, the kid is a stud, and that's how you win in the NFL. I could go on with these really high hopes about Howard in the 412 area code, but why don't you give us a little reality check on Howard? He was the quarterback you thought that the Steelers were going to get. You thought they might have to get him higher. They got him in the 6th, so it's good value, I think, on Howard. But what is he projected to do for the Steelers?
Yeah, he's about 2 rounds later than I thought they would get him. To be quite honest, in my mock, I actually had him going in the 3rd. So, yeah, they got him way later than I thought they would. The quarterbacks in general in this class just went later than everybody thought they would. Shuck going at 40, Dart even. I think most people, when we were talking about Jackson Dart, had him probably going top 25. He goes 26. He went 25 exactly, right? So, yeah, I mean, all these quarterbacks kind of at the top, cool, there were 3, and then it was silence until Milrow at 92. I mean, that was late for him. So a lot of these quarterbacks fell. And so Will Howard is great value. And here's the thing. He's a really nice fit with the Steelers' offense in general. I mean, he's got a great deep ball. He can layer throws to all levels of the football field. He's a great leader. He's a former team captain. He played his best football down the stretch in the college football playoffs. He was making some really good throws there. He played, obviously, with a ton of talent around him with Emeka Egbuka, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, lots of great players on that Ohio State team. But Will Howard carried his load for sure. This was a guy that made big time throws. In the pocket, he is a cool, calm, collected dude. He can step up in the pocket. His pressure to sack ratio, this is a really important stat, John. From what you look at over the last 10 years, if you look at pressure to sack rate, this really translates very well to the NFL. If you're very good at it, it translates. If you're very bad at it, it also translates. For example, Kenny Pickett had a really worrying rate. Obviously, that became a big time issue with him in the NFL. But when you look at Will Howard, his pressure to sack ratio was just around 12%. That's really good. He's able to step up in the pocket, have those pocket movements to buy time. I wouldn't call him a lightning quick processor, but he gets the ball to where it needs to go on time and in rhythm. I also think that this guy is a little robotic in the pocket, kind of like Mason in some ways. He's a little Mason Rudolph-y in a few ways. He is a little robotic in the pocket. Sometimes he can become a statue, which is weird because he can run a little bit. He's probably a guy that runs a 4.7 40. If you need him to scramble, he can do it. They've even run, quarterback draws for him and stuff. He can run a little bit. So he's a good player. I don't think he's a future Hall of Famer or future franchise guy, but can this guy be Mason Rudolph? Can he be a long-term backup with, spot starter starts if you need him to? I think he could do that. In the 6th round, that's obviously great value for a guy like this. So I really do like Will Howard. I don't think he's going to be the savior of the franchise. So keep your eyes still on 2026 because that is obviously going to be the big year for the quarterback class with the Steelers in mind. But Will Howard will be able to give the Steelers a long-term backup option, in my opinion, and really a guy that you can latch onto. He'll have to develop a little bit. He's got a little bit of mechanical work to do, specifically with his feet. But I do think this is a guy that can really become a really good backup. And so in the 6th round, you take that every day, twice on Sunday. If you're getting a quarterback in the 6th round, they turn to a long-term backup. That's a win.
Hey, thank you for that much needed dose of reality. And really, reality sounds pretty good for, like you said, a 6th round pick, Will Howard, if he can be that solid long-term backup and spot starter. The other guy I really want to get into, because he's been in town a couple of days now, and they're talking about the Iowa running backs supplanting Jaylen Warren, and that he's going to make Warren expendable as soon as next season. But first, Nick, I got to tell our audience, I got to call a timeout, tell our audience about a seriously good listen about a deadly serious subject. It starts out this way. When Lamont Jones learns his young cousin died in custody just weeks after entering prison, his world shatters. The official report claims natural causes, but that doesn't explain the bruises covering his body and his missing teeth. Grief transforms into frustration, and Lamont faces an impossible choice. Accept the story he's being told or risk everything to uncover the truth about what happened to his cousin. From Wondery comes Death County, PA. It's the chilling, true story of corruption, cover-ups, and one man's relentless pursuit of justice. It begins as a search for answers in a single case, but it soon reveals a pattern too disturbing to ignore. It turns out Lamont's cousin's death is just one of many in the Dauphin County Prison here in Harrisburg, and powerful forces are working to keep the truth buried. Death County, PA is hosted by award-winning Penn Live journalist Joshua Vaughn, and you can binge all episodes early and ad-free on Wondery Plus. So start your free trial in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Hope you can check that out. And of course, now we're going back to the Steelers talk, and Nick sort of giving us not just a post-mortem on the draft, because that's been done to death, but projections for this coming season for some of these rookies and the propensity or the probability that they're actually going to deliver production for this season to come, this 2025 season. And one of the guys that's looking to, that certainly fans are looking to contribute in a big way, has been wearing the black and gold of Iowa in college, and now will be wearing the black and gold for the Steelers, is running back Caleb Johnson. And talk that, he's going to quickly supplant Jaylen Warren, who I always liked, and I love his pass protection, and I like his hard runs. And And we know he just signed a 1-year tender. So he's solidified. Is he expendable as early as next season because of
I mean, listen, I think they're different in a few ways. I think Caleb Johnson replaces your true early down volume runner. I mean, he
Mm,
replaces Najee Harris, but he's a different player than Najee Harris. We're talking about an explosive mid wide zone runner. That's what we're talking about here with Caleb Johnson. This is a guy that's patient. He's got great footwork. He's got the ability to really hit the gas. Reminds me a lot of Arian Foster. That's the comp I would use. Arian Foster ran a 4.68, yet he was a home run hitter. Caleb Johnson's a similar way. The time speed's 4.57 for him, but you look at the GPS times, he's hit 22 miles per hour. For what it's worth, that's the same speed that DK Metcalf hits routinely. So Johnson can run. He has explosiveness in his game. He's an early down back that can really, really keep you ahead of the sticks. That's, I think, the big thing. He's a very much an Arthur Smith type running back. He's a perfect fit for this offense. I couldn't imagine a better running back fit, to be quite honest with you. I don't think there was a better one in the class. Just never expected Caleb Johnson to make it all the way to 83. The Steelers never did either. I mean, the Steelers were trying to trade up in this spot to go get him. So that's the type of player they think they have here. Of course, he fell right to them. So they're lucky enough for that to happen. So Caleb Johnson is just such a fun player. We are talking about a guy, though, that doesn't have a lot of proven pass pro reps, doesn't have a lot of proven receiving production. Now, when he was asked to be a receiver, he had soft hands, he was good in space. He looked like a guy that could be a legitimate receiver. So we'll see that part of his game. Pass pro, completely unproven. I mean, he's going to have to work on that. So what's going to happen is you're probably going to have a 1A, 1B situation here with between Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren. Warren's going to take the pass pro, the receiving stuff, and he's still going to get play on early downs. I mean, Jalen Warren is too good, to be quite honest with you, not to get play on all 3 downs. We know Jalen Warren's a 3-down back. We know the type of player he is. Warren's issues at times, are the fumbles, things like that. But Caleb Johnson, on the other hand, does not fumble the ball very often at all. So Caleb Johnson, very sturdy in the ball security area, can be a bigger wide zone back, a bell cow back if you need him to be. But more importantly, he doesn't impede upon Jalen Warren, I think, a lot. Warren is going to give you way more value on passing downs. In 2-minute, 4-minute situations, it's going to be all Jalen Warren. I think you're still going to get some Kenneth Gainwell in there too as a 3rd down type of back. They're just different players, those two versus Caleb Johnson. But I love Caleb Johnson. I love this fit. I love this pick. He's a top 50 player in the class to me. The value here was great. The fit was great. He can be that type of dynamic runner that we see a lot of teams have on their menu right now, right? He's not Jahmyr Gibbs. He's not Saquon. He's a different flavor of that, but he's a guy that has home run hitter ability. He has the ability to really hit the gas and make this run game way more efficient than it would have been otherwise. So with this deep running back class, the Steelers got ahead of the run. Between their picks in the 3rd and the 4th round, there were so many players that came off the board. Guys like Bashal Tutin came off the board, right? And someone that we had mocked the Steelers consistently didn't even make it to them in the 4th. So they take Caleb Johnson, who, in my opinion, just is a different level of runner from a lot of the guys that went after him. And so what a coup, honestly, to be honest with you, for the Steelers to get Caleb Johnson at 83. I think it's a great pick from them. I loved their first 2 picks of this draft. I love Caleb Johnson. I love Derek Harmon. I thought those were the 2 best fits at their respective positions in the entire class for them, and they got both of them. So I really thought they were 2 really smart picks, and I think Johnson has the ability to be a big-time threat in the run game from day one, but I don't think it hurts Jalen Warren necessarily. In fact, as we mentioned, this is the exact type of guy I would pair with Jalen Warren for the future. It's no longer a bell cow back league. Even the best running backs have spell backs. And Jalen Warren is much more than just a spell back. And so I would extend Warren long term and have these 2 run roughshod in the backfield for a while here with the Steelers, because it is a perfect 1-2 punch. They complement each other extremely well.
No, I love that assessment actually. And you mentioned that 40 time. Maybe that explains why he fell to the Steelers. And Tomlin addressed that issue of speed as it relates to Johnson, and he had no qualms, saying, quote, "We didn't question his speed whatsoever watching the video." And oftentimes that is the case. You can watch video and be really excited about someone's speed, or you can go to the combine and get excited by their 40 time, or in his case, not excited. His speed was not in question on the video. He broke a lot of long runs in the Big Ten. So if that 40 time hurt him, more power to Pittsburgh for looking beyond that and looking at the real speed, the on the field speed. So we know DK Metcalf is sort of the Steelers' second round pick, and we know Omar Khan left the wide receiver room short last season. Did he make amends? Did he, and we had a recent signing with Woods. How's that wide receiver room shaping up? What is going to be, the strategy, for getting the ball to Pickens? And, is it going to be the splash plays back in vogue, the long balls? And who's the quarterback to do that?
Well, I think it's going to be very much so an explosive offense. I think they're going to be focused on this. I think we're going to see a lot more classical Arthur Smith type offense here. Play action, middle of the field, try and get DK Metcalf on those slants digs and just let him go. I think you're going to have the ability to throw those go balls, of course, where you have two receivers that can go get it. But Pickens is a little bit better, honestly, at contested balls than DK is. So you have the ability to do that. I think Pickens expanded his route tree last year, so you could do a lot of fun things there. But then you add Robert Woods, and this is an interesting signing. They signed him yesterday to a cheap deal. Think of him as your Van Jefferson, Allen Robinson, but better, just because he can block, and he's tough over the middle of the field. I mean, this guy has glue on his hands, does not drop the ball, comes from the Sean McVay scheme because he played with the Rams at his height of his career. This is the type of player that you look for in this type of room. It's still a really young room, right? I mean, you look around the room, DK's 27, he's a vet. But outside of him, Pickens, Austin, Wilson, it's a young room. So they have Woods there to be a consummate professional, a guy that can block, he can dig out safeties, be a positive net in the run game, and then make really tough catches over the middle of the field when you need him to. This is the type of guy that, to me, screams Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's exactly what my first reaction was to it, is that Robert Woods can act like Alan Lazard last year, where he was this big-bodied guy over the middle of the field that made tight window catches, and that's kind of what he does. He doesn't really have much juice left, to be quite honest with you. The Bobby Trees of old isn't really there much anymore. He had 20 receptions for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. I mean, nothing crazy there, but when he's called upon, and Aaron Rodgers loves these types of big-bodied guys over the middle of the field that make these tough grabs, Woods is going to probably take advantage of those. So he just adds another element. And then you have these, speedy dots in the middle of the field out of the slot, right? You have these field stretching slot receivers. You have Austin, who can do both horizontal and vertical stretch and play outside when needed. He's a quicker route runner, separator type. And then you have Roman Wilson, who's the wild card of the room. That's kind of how I'm going to call Roman Wilson this summer. He's a wild card for them. That really is what he is. He flies off the line of scrimmage. If you heard me talk about Roman Wilson before, I love his instant acceleration off the line of scrimmage. It's just so hard to get your hands on him, and it's so hard to keep up with him across the field when he gets to top speed in 2 steps. Like, that is the thing about Roman Wilson. So when you run those overs, when you run those mesh routes, when you run those digs, when you run things that run horizontal, he can just separate through pure speed. There's not a lot of slot corners or safeties that can match him foot for foot. That's the really good thing about Roman Wilson. So we'll see there. But that's a deeper room, right? That 5 is way deeper than anything they had last year. I mean, Van Jefferson was a starting receiver last year. It's such a deeper room this year. Now, strong personalities in the room, of course, between DK and George. Those are 2 really strong personalities. But you have a professional in Robert Woods. You have a really solid breakout slot in Calvin Austin. You have a wild card in Roman Wilson. You have your dirty work special teamer in Ben Skowronek. So it's just a deeper pool that they have this year. That should be your 6 on the roster, I think. That should be good enough. And then you can mix in, however you look at your tight end room. You still have Pat Freiermuth to work in there, Darnell Washington. So it's a deeper group. It's not, going to mistaken anybody for, one of the best receiving rooms in the league. It's not that, but it is a very solid room now with different skill sets that fit different things, right? You have that X receiver type in DK Metcalf. You have another guy that could be the X or the Z, a field stretching Z in George Pickens. You have a slot Z in Calvin Austin. You have a power slot Z in Robert Woods. You have a pure slot separator, a horizontal field stretcher in Roman Wilson. And then you kind of have this versatile blocker special team types in Glenn Skowronek. So it's a different group, but it's got this diversification of skill sets that all play off one another. And so I think that's a good thing for the Steelers. So this is a much better room than it was last year. Again, it's not going to be, the best room in the league, but can it get you there? Sure. And what does this room scream to everybody? Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers. It just screams Aaron Rodgers to me, to be quite honest with you. They're deep enough to play three wide. Aaron Rodgers loves to play out of shotgun 11 personnel. If you know that, that has been a hallmark of his over his career. He loves to do that. Steelers now have a deep enough receiver room to play enough 11 personnel to satiate Aaron Rodgers. They have enough to run the Arthur Smith offense. I would be fairly surprised if Aaron Rodgers is not the quarterback here. But to your point as well, Mason Rudolph and Will Howard also fit this skill set. So if Rodgers got hurt or for some reason doesn't come, the Steelers at least have backup plans there, and they do fit those two quarterbacks well.
And that's the one thing Rooney said, that they wanted quarterbacks in the same mold. No substituting sort of a run gunner for, a deep pocket passer. So it seems like they're all on the same page in the quarterback room, especially if Aaron Rodgers comes into the fold. And I'm going to be seeing AC/DC out at Heinz Field next week. And I think you nailed Skowronek with that dirty deeds done dirt cheap moniker that you put on him. I just like his hard-nosed approach to the receiver and obviously special teams position. And the other thing, the draft, I'm looking for messages in the draft. And we got the message to Aaron Rodgers loud and clear. We got the message, certainly, that George Pickens was not going to be trade bait. But do we actually think now that Pickens is going to get his last best shot at a second contract with the Steelers, depending on how he does both on the field and with his attitude and demeanor and maturity? Does he have a clean slate going in this season, trying to sort of get that bridge to the second contract?
I mean, I don't know about clean slate. Obviously, there's experiences from last year when he was late to meetings and games and things like that, and the outbursts on the sidelines that they're going to have against him. But he has a chance to wipe it clean. There's no doubt about that. He has a chance to kind of redirect himself this year. We'll see. I mean, listen, the Steelers got calls about him. From what I heard, no team offered even a day 2 pick for him. So what I'm going to try and say right now, if I were in George Pickens' corner, I would say, hey, man, listen, there weren't many teams even, that were calling for you. It was a few teams, and they were offering day 3 picks. And it sounds like from talking around the league, if he hits the market next year, it's going to be a pretty depressed market. So even if the Steelers don't want you back, you come in this year, you become a pretty good professional, you just ball out, you're going to get paid money, man. This guy's got talent out the wazoo. We know how talented George Pickens is. He just has to lock in. It can't be, up and down. He can't be this high variance player that we know he's been at times. He's just got to be that steady force. I think that's the thing, right? George Pickens at his best can be a real threat in the league. A wide receiver 1 type threat. We've seen him at his best. When he's at his best, he's pretty unstoppable, isn't he, John? So that's the type of player he is. So if Pickens locks in this year and can kind of show the league, hey man, I'm not that guy. I was young, I was learning. That's just happened before. I've seen guys come into the NFL, that they were young kids and they were coming in and they were, a little crazy, a little wild, and they calm down and they kind of, understand. They learn from vets. I think Robert Woods is about as good a vet as you can learn. That guy has been in the league for 12 years. He's won Super Bowls. He's done everything there is to do in this league. There's a consummate professional right there. DK Metcalf, even though DK Metcalf is known for kind of at times on the field being, again, a little bit of an emotional player, DK has been a guy that's been a consummate professional week in and week out inside locker rooms. He's not been a guy that has really wreaked havoc in any way. And George Pickens, is the type of player that with a really good year this year, we're talking not just 20, we're talking 25 plus $1 million a year he could get. He's that type of talent. But if he hit the market right now, I mean, I don't know. What would he get? 20 maybe? Somewhere around there? I mean, that's the thing. And so, George just needs to lock in. I don't think they're going to trade him. Again, the Steelers believe in him enough. Clearly, they weren't going to trade him for scraps. They believe in – it wasn't like they were trying to just get off him, right? They were just trading for anything. They didn't accept a 4th or a 5th just for him. So clearly they have belief in George that he can do this. And so they're showing belief in him in some way. And I think, all about how he kind of handles this summer, how he handles the season, it's going to mean so much to the kind of future of his career and everything. And so I think that's going to be the big question for him is how he handles this. But he has an opportunity this year to really cash in next year. And so we'll see. That's going to be the big question. But George Pickens has a big opportunity this year. Don't think he's going to get traded unless he forces that issue for some reason, but do not expect a trade at this point.
Okay, and maybe the lackluster trade market that the Steelers saw during the draft for George Pickens will give our talented but temperamental wide receiver a dose of humble pie, much needed, and maybe a wake-up call to rise to the occasion on the field and off the field to cash in as he could do with a great performance and a good demeanor this season. So we'll look for that. The other message that I think is interesting that a lot of people are interpreting is that there was a message for TJ Watt. They got another edge, a national champion edge rusher out of Ohio State. The rumors are that Watt is playing hardball in these contract negotiations, that his brother, who's in the media now, is sort of negotiating his deal through the media, basically saying that the Steelers blew it and they could have got their hometown discount if they had done this last year, and now it's going to be, every penny that Watt's going to squeeze out of them. But is there a message for Watt in what the Steelers did on draft day?
I don't really think so. I've heard this talked about before about the Jack Sawyer pick, sending a message to Watt. Guys, they didn't really plan to take an edge rusher. It was the fact that Jack Sawyer was a projected top 2-round player and fell to 123, and the value was just too good. They didn't really come into this draft saying, we are going to take an edge. I don't think that was an agenda for them. It just happened to be there. And so they took a really good run defender at 123. And so this isn't a message to TJ Watt. It's just adding another player to a room that matters a ton. Good teams have good edge rusher rotations. That's the point here. TJ Watt may play hardball. The Steelers may play hardball. This is negotiation and contracts. It happens. It's business. Nowadays, business is public. It is what it is. Social media posts, cryptic quotes. It doesn't matter. Unfollows on social media. This stuff happens around every contract negotiation in the NFL at this point. So does it really matter that much? I don't think it does. And listen, you might have to bear it out for 4 months and then it'll get signed 2 days before the season starts. That happens. Don't be surprised. The Steelers love to do it, right? They did it last year with Freiermuth and Hayward, and then they inked them both 2 days before the season started. Okay, that could happen again this year. But TJ Watt's going to get a contract from the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's probably going to be near $40 million per year. Whether you like that or not, that's up to you. These theatrics may happen, but he's not getting traded. He's not moving on. He's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. This is a non-story to me, to be quite honest with you, in terms of that. So the draft, sending a message to TJ Watt, there was no message sent to TJ Watt through this. They just drafted Jack Sawyer because he was great value and can add to their room something they didn't have, which was a backup, really good run defender that can help Nick Herbig, to be quite honest with you, because Herbig's a guy that is so good as a pass rusher, and his weakness would be more on the run defense side. Sawyer can take that against heavier matchups, and Herbig can be an absolute demon against passing-heavy teams. So the Steelers now just have a really deep edge rusher rotation. Don't read into this too much.
All right, and another good reality check from Nick, and that's why I throw these questions out, because I want all of our audience, some of whom might be thinking there was a message, to get a dose of reality. But what about the message to the league, the narrative of this draft, the theme of this draft? Is there any broader takeaways that we can see? We know how the world champion Eagles have a narrative to the way they build their roster. They have, big guys on both sides of the ball right up front. What's the overall takeaway that you see in what we did with this draft and the free agents we've signed and the 3-year trajectory under Omar Khan's leadership?
Well, there's a takeaway. We keep hearing about it, and it's the trenches. How could you have any other takeaway? In the first 3 drafts of this regime, John, the 2023 draft, they drafted 2 offensive linemen an interior defensive lineman, and an edge rusher. In the second draft, they drafted 3 offensive linemen and a defensive lineman. This year, they draft 2 interior defensive linemen and an edge rusher. I mean, this team is building their trenches. I mean, that is what they're doing. They are focusing on the trenches first. They added different things in free agency. They added a long-term answer at receiver. They added a corner there. So they valued those in the free agency market more. Probably more of an indictment on the classes this year than anything, to be quite honest with you. But this team values their big boys. That's what they do. This year, though, the clear message was we're not going to let Baltimore happen again. The last 2 games against Baltimore, they ran for over 500 yards combined against the Steelers. They are not walking into Baltimore next year and letting Derrick Henry run down their throats. That's what I think they sent the message here is you add Derek Harmon, who's a pass rusher and run defender alike, so that's just a great talent you get. Jack Sawyer, run defense focused. Why Gabe Black? This guy is a massive human being. I mean, he is 6'5", 335. I mean, he is a big guy. Didn't play a ton of nose at Iowa, but he will probably be the backup nose to Keanu Benton. They released Montravius Adams yesterday, so that is probably going to be the move there for the Steelers. So this guy is going to be a run defense specialist. They just added more run defense specialists. Daniel Ekuale, they're signing this year from the Patriots, run defense specialist. There's just a lot more run defense up and down this depth chart now. Their top 3 guys are heavily kind of in both buckets, and Keanu Benton's more slanted towards pass rush than run defense, which I think is good, honestly. When you look at it, and they have some other guys on that depth chart, guys like DeMarvin Leal, who are slanted more towards pass rush than run defense. So they have some guys here that have different skill sets, but they said, man, we are going into this class, and we're going to fix this run defense, and we need to fix this run defense, because look at it. And even look at, some of their other moves. I mean, bringing in Darius Slay. Okay, you're probably thinking with Darius Slay, well, they fixed that because he's a veteran corner and communication. That's probably a big part of it. Also, though, notably, good tackler. He's a good tackler. So their secondary additions this year are pretty good tacklers on top of that. And so the Steelers just kind of added these different players that had this identity, and it was, we are going to stop the run. We are going to add a few players in the secondary that help us against the pass, guys like Darius Slay, for example. And what we are going to do is not let ourselves get beat on the ground. And then on the offensive side, we're going to wear you down, and we're going to hit explosives on the ground. And if you can stop us, maybe you can. We're going to hit you behind that with explosives in the pass game. The Steelers have an identity here. I'm not completely sure it's going to work out. I think it's still a year or 2 away from fully having the personnel and the coaching pieces locked together. But I do think they're building an identity here, and it's to build the trenches. And specifically, John, I can't help but notice what they're adding every single year. Okay, so they add a legitimate run defense, and they're adding more to their defense. So they're reloading on defense right now, right? They add the defensive line. They had a young linebacker come in last year in Peyton Wilson. They're going to get younger next year, corner and safety more than likely. Okay, that's interesting. But the offensive side of the ball, they sign Pat Freiermuth long-term, draft a running back, they get 3 linemen, they trade for DK Metcalf, so they add all these weapons. What are they doing that for? I mean, why would they do that? And then they ignore one position, notably. They ignore quarterback. Why? Jalen Hurts, Brock Purdy. I'm just thinking of guys that came into great situations that just took off. Josh Allen, they came into great situations where they were coached well, where they were around great personnel, where they were around teams that had surrounding casts that were able to lift those guys up while they learned. Bo Nix is a great example of that last year. He had legitimate weapons around him. He had a great play caller that understood what he did, and he matured over the year and got way better than anyone thought he was going to be. The Steelers are trying to go by that same principle. They are trying to build up this team. They're still going to have to do it next year because they're going to have a few holes. They're probably going to need another receiver. They're probably going to need a guard. So they're going to have some holes along this offense still that they're going to have to fill in. But they have plenty of cap space to do that. They'll have plenty of draft picks to do that. They are building up this team to try and say, okay, what can we do in 26? Plop that quarterback right in there, and that quarterback's going to have a really nice fit, a really nice spot to kind of fill in on. And that's exactly what they're doing right now. We'll see if it works. It's their plan. I don't agree with all the steps of the plan that they've done so far. I think some of it's been sloppily executed, but I can see their vision, and this is what they're trying to do.
Wow, that is a 30,000-foot look at the intricacies of the piece here, the piece there. He just showed us the whole puzzle of what this is all leading up to. And of course, it will be the 2026 draft in Pittsburgh, the backdrop of 100,000 Yinzers waving their terrible towel and demanding their franchise quarterback. And the thing, just to talk about the narrative of the draft and the message and the identity, the word that kept ringing in my ears when I'd hear all the draft profiles, and certainly on the defensive guys that we took, but even offensive guys from Metcalf to Howard guys, physicality, is what they're looking for as well. And I think we got some of that. And like I said, from now until kickoff of the regular season, we're going to see how this roster is now going to be made into a team, and we'll be following it all with Nick every Tuesday on the Steelers Breakdown podcast. So let's be here and let's go Steelers in 2025.